From the newsroom of the Bryan College Station Eagle, this is the Brazos Sports Prepscast. And now, the Eagle High School sports team, Alex Miller and Jake Weiss.
What's going on, everyone? You're listening to the Brazos Sports Prepscast, a podcast about high school football here in the Brazos Valley. I'm Alex Miller with the Eagle, joined always by our high school sports reporter, Jake the Man Weiss. What's up, Jake? How are you today?
I like the nickname. I'm doing good. Now that I've got a nickname, I like it.
Well, it only took us half the season to get you a nickname because, Jake, we're halfway through the regular season. How about that?
It's flying by. I didn't even realize that, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, last week, a couple big wins for the College Station schools, kicking off district play, a couple of tough losses for the Bryan folks. Let's jump right into it, all right?
Yeah.
So, A&M Consolidated, coming off the bye week, they bounced back with a 48-34 win on the road over Georgetown. This was the Keyshawn Thomas and Trey Taylor show. I mean, they combined for 283 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. Keyshawn was our player of the week this week. You know, Jake, you were over there in Georgetown. What'd you kind of see from the Tigers in their bounce-back win?
Yeah, they really just got the ground game going again. If you look back to the Lufkin game, I think that was something we talked about on the podcast, was that they just really couldn't run the ball, getting anything going. Last week, they got the ground game going. The offensive line and defensive line were something that Coach Fedora kind of talked about after the Lufkin loss, just saying, hey, we got to work on that. That was something they definitely worked on because both defensive line, I thought, and offensive line looked really good. And it showed on the field, too. I mean, 4 touchdowns, almost 300 yards between Trey and Keyshawn. They just really bounced back in a big way.
Yeah, Consol, they're coming back home this Friday. They're playing Cedar Park. Cedar Park got a pretty convincing win over Georgetown Eastview last week. You know, Jake, what do you kind of see where the Tigers need to keep it going in the right direction, trying to build off that win last week?
Yeah, Coach Fedora and I talked about this a little bit after the game because in the first half last week, it was all Consol. I mean, they were up 21-0 at the end of the first. I think going into halftime, they were up maybe 35-13. It was starting to kind of get run away with it, but you just brought up the final score. They kind of let them get back into it in the second half a little bit. They never were close. You know, there was never a point where I thought, oh, man, Consol might lose this. They always would score when Georgetown did. But I think maybe on the defensive side, they might want to kind of clean up there a little bit. A couple penalties they had kind of kept drives going for Georgetown. So I think really kind of just really fine-tuning the defense. And he talked about, too, a little bit about some offensive mistakes. They had an interception on offense. So kind of just fixing up some of those small mistakes, I think, for Consol will be kind of the big key this week.
Well, College Station, they topped Leander 38-10, Jake.
Yeah, you were there. I was going to ask you a little bit about that one, but, it's a convincing win. It sounded like they needed to clean up a little bit of things. What did you see out there, Alex?
Yeah, sound win for the Cougars. Game was never in doubt, kind of like the Tigers, but 14 penalties for about 150 yards. I mean, the Cougars are going to want to get those flags cleaned up and some extracurriculars after the play, some unsportsmanlike, pretty uncharacteristic for pretty disciplined Cougars team. Still rushed for 360 yards, though, and Aiden Martinez-Brown, sophomore running back, he's really starting to find a groove as that number 2 guy. He led the way with 134 yards on 16 carries, 2 touchdowns. So, not College Station's offense, they continue to just progress each week. Defense continues to play sound. Just a little uncharacteristic last week, those penalties, and so, I'm sure the Cougars are going to want to get that cleaned up this week. They got their first true road game of the season. They're on the road at Georgetown Eastview. Jake, I think you might be heading out there. Is that right? Back-to-back weeks in Georgetown.
It's the same stadium, actually. I didn't realize
they share a stadium, yeah.
Yeah. So at least I know how to get there now.
That's true. Did you go to 600 Degrees Pizza?
I got there pretty much right at 6. I got lost.
That's okay. We'll spare you that one. But Jake, this is also going to be, I think, your first time watching the Cougars. Where do you feel like you're trying to see from the Cougars this week?
Yeah, defense. I've heard a lot about their defense from you. when we were at media days, I feel like they brought mostly defensive guys. So I'm kind of excited to see, their lockdown defense a little bit in action. And then on offense, I've kind of heard about him a lot. I've read about him from your stories. I feel like you've been kind of the College Station beat writer a little bit because I feel like you've been to all of them, right? So far?
I have. Be out of town at a wedding this week. My apologies to everybody. But
so, yeah, if you're a College Station fan, you're stuck with me this week. But, Arrington Maiden, I'm excited to see him in action. I know he was kind of thrust into the role, starting quarterback. Didn't start, I think, until that second game, right? That was
right.
When he first start. Excited to see kind of his development, where he kind of continues to grow. And then you just mentioned it, Aiden Martinez-Brown kind of stepped up a bit last week as that number 2 running back. Kind of interested, too, on offense to see how the run game looks. I know it's been, a couple weeks without Marquise now. We already knew he was going to be injured. But I'm just interested to see kind of how that run game continues to grow and develop.
Well, on the flip side of town, Bryan, they had a tough loss to Temple, 53-19. Without Malcolm Gooden at quarterback, it seemed like the Vikings just couldn't really get it going on offense there. The Wildcats, they came out big in that third quarter, went out and got almost a 40-point lead at one point. Bryan's going to want to watch this one quick, and they've got a pretty tricky road game against Copper's Cove this Friday.
Yeah, I think for Bryan, it was a pretty impressive first half. They kept pace with Temple, but the good thing is, Temple won the district last year, so you kind of got to look at it and say, well, we played a good half against a team that won the district last year. Where can we go from here? How can we build off of that? For
sure. Well, the Vikings, they're certainly looking to bounce back this week against the Bulldogs. It's Dogs, D-A-W-G-S, Jake. Dogs.
I'm a fan of that.
Well, Rudder, they played on Saturday, and they fell in a heartbreaker in overtime to Lamar Consolidated, 42-35. Sounds like the Rangers were kind of hoping for maybe a pass interference in the end zone on the last play of the game, but unfortunately, they didn't get it. Rudder led by 14 in the third quarter, just unable to hold on to that lead. Tough loss for them.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before. Defense is still young, but they're coming along. I think maybe one more game. Maybe even after this, they've got a bye week now. So I think they keep working, and, they'll be back out there. And I think we've talked to Coach Izar. We know him pretty well. I think he'll make sure those mistakes get corrected.
For sure. And, hey, that offense is really starting to come along, too. Yeah. Xavier Ramirez, he's doing well. He's really starting to get connected with those receivers. Jaquise Martin, Brandon Cooks. They really were starting to get it going this last week, getting some good things. And I can't remember. It was either Kevin Holmes or Nate had a really good game. I can't remember who it was. I was meant to put that down. So you know who you were. We know who you were. We knew you had a good game. So, Rangers off this week for a big game against Huntsville. That was a big win for them last year. That was a huge win on the road for the Rangers last year over there in Huntsville. So looking to maybe replicate a little bit of magic this year at home, Merrill Green Stadium next week. So, all right, in the private school ranks, Allen Academy, they shut out St. Francis Episcopal 64-0. Hey, how about Rusty Lai McMurray? He's a guy we talk about every now and then on the podcast because, he just keeps having some really big games. And Friday was another one. 3 pick sixes, all right? 3. Okay, one is pretty impressive. 2 is something. 3, though, that's pretty wild. And then he added 2 more offensive scores. So pretty good game for him. And then let's see, Jake, what else we had happen?
Yeah, St. Joseph, they dropped a close one to Bradsport Christian, 44-42. That was a tough one for them. Just seemed like every week, kind of, at least to you and me, at least to me and to you, kind of the show, it seems like every week they're just in a close game and just kind of can't hang on at the end. So tough loss for them.
Yeah, they're right there.
Yeah.
You see the Eagles, they're right there. It's coming. It's just they're just trying to get over that hump.
Exactly.
I know they're 1-4, but they're a pretty good team for being 1-4. So, and then Brazos Christian, I mean, they're a talented team too, but lost to Bay Area Christian by 20 points, so they're looking to get back on track this week. Hey, there were a couple big upsets around the Brazos Valley last week. Okay, Cameron Yo, they go on the road and beat number 3 Lorena 48-44. Excuse me. Yeoman jumped out to a 21-0 lead, had to hold on to get that tight win, walk away victorious. I think he caught up with Coach Rhodes this week. What do you have to say about that win?
Yeah, I mean, first off, just excited. One of my favorite lines he gave me this week over the phone was that I asked him just, hey, how excited is everyone in town? Everyone fired up, and he was like, hey, look, everyone in our community loves Yo football. They're going to support us through thick and thin, but he's like, they just needed an excuse to get fired up, and he's like, I think Friday gave it to him. I thought that was really awesome that he said that. But, yeah, no, that 21-0 lead, he said, really was a big factor. He said they had let's see if I can remember off the top of my head here. They had an interception returned for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Then another one was a fumble. They got it in, deep within Lorraine territory on the fumble. Then they punched that one in right away. So he said pretty much they just jumped on them early, and that really kind of carried them through the rest of the game. That momentum helped them a ton.
Well, that's certainly a huge win for the Yeomen. That district, I mean, we keep talking about it. It's just going to be a fun one to watch with them and Lorena and Franklin. Even Franklin's playing Rockdale this week. Got Lexington. Oh, nope, Lexington's not in that district. I lied. But looking at the other big upset, Somerville, okay, they notched their first win of the year. They beat Yorktown 35-28. First-year coach Philip Roberts got his first win. I think you caught up with Coach Roberts too.
Yeah, I did. No, once again, honestly, I got to give a big shout out to Coach Rhodes and Coach Roberts because they were like quote machines. Everything they said, I was like, man, this is gold. I love this. No, but yeah, he was real excited about it. He wanted to be a little humble too about it. He said, hey, one win isn't going to change everything, but this is a really good start. His real big focus in his first year is, hey, we want to change the culture, show these guys, hey, this is how you do things. This is how we want to do things. Really give them confidence. And he said, hey, like I said earlier, one win isn't going to change things, but this kind of really helps show the guys, hey, the buy-in, the running, all the stuff you do in the off season. We do this for a reason. This is why we do it for. Because, good things like this happen. So that was something he really talked about, and, yeah.
Well, let's get into our final segment of the podcast, okay? 3 games to watch. Jake, what's our first game to watch this week?
Navasota at Bay City. It's going to be a good one. I know last week we talked about the El Campo game, kind of how they were going to respond against 5-star running back Ruben
Owens.
There we go. For some reason I was thinking Thomas. I was like, Ruben Thomas? That's not right. I'm glad you corrected me there.
And he had a pretty big game last week, too.
To say he did.
So,
but yeah, how they respond after that one. We've seen them play some tough games already this point in the season. So interested to see what they do this week against Bay City.
For sure. Second game to watch, Bremond. They're playing a neutral site game against Windthorst. Okay, this is a great cross-region game to close up non-district play. It's kind of got a playoff feel here, in my opinion. Windthorst, they won the state championship down at 2A Division II a couple years back. Bremond, they're up to number 9 in that 2A2 poll. This game's going to be played it's going to be in Aledo, Windthorst up near Wichita Falls, so meeting somewhere in the middle. This I think has the chance to be a really good game, and this if Bremond can get a win, I think that's going to pay dividends for them as they enter district play. Not only that, but if they get into November and even into December, they can point back to this game of like, hey, we took a long bus ride. We played a pretty good team that we probably don't really know much about from a different part of the state. So Coach Kozowski knows what he's doing, scheduling a good game this week, and curious to see if the Tigers can come away with a big win. So, Jake, take us home on our final game to watch.
Yeah, Columbus at Madisonville. The Mustangs are back at home. I feel like every week it seems like they're on the road. Maybe that's just me, but I feel like every week Madisonville's on the road. But, they're unranked. Last week they lost to Livingston. Tough loss for them. I think they were, number 9 rate in the polls. So they dropped out. They'll wrap up. I think this is their last non-district game. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they'll wrap up non-district here at home. A win for them would just be good, kind of get back on track. I know they had a pretty good start to this year. Last week was kind of a tough pill to swallow, but I think a win could give them a lot of momentum before they go into district play.
Well, Jake, I think that's all we got for this week. What say you, friend?
Yeah, I think we covered everything. That's all the news fit to print.
There we go. All right. Hey, thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of the Browse Sports Prepscast. Be sure to like or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our high school sports coverage here in the Brazos Valley. For Jake Weiss, I'm Alex Miller. We'll see you next week.